Hello there. This evening I'll be talking about the Pavoni Europiccola. It was an espresso machine originally made in the early 1960s for home use. This particular model is from 1998, and it's got a few more modern features. It's got a pressure stat inside it to regulate the boiler pressure. I personally added this guy, the manometer here, to be able to gauge the pressure inside the boiler. It's set to sit at just a little bit less than 1 bar. It fluctuates between 0.9 bar and 1 bar. Another thing that I added is actually just a little group thermometer. There's a little thermistor here that attaches just above the skirt part of the bell and in near the neck. That's my personally preferred place to put a thermometer if you're going to add thermometry to the group, but your personal preference on where to put the thermometer may vary. So this is it here. This is a Taylor guy. Right now he's saying 142 degrees. That's a little low, and actually it's because I haven't bled the steam out yet. So what I'm going to do in this video is show you a little bit of the process, other than the basket creation. Actually, I already have a basket prepared. This is 16 grams in an Electra basket, actually. With this girl here, I have 2 Electra baskets. The original Pavoni double, which, if you can see, is quite a bit smaller than the Electra basket. With this thing, I'd go 14 grams max. It's a little difficult. 12 grams would be your best bet. And then you could pull, with the brew ratio, you could pull a standard normale doing 12 grams in here with the basically with the volume of a shot that can be produced in this machine. Otherwise, there's also the Pavoni single that comes with it. I've got a standard spouted portafilter here. The the hole sawed bottomless portafilter with a wood handle. Actually, there were custom made wood handles both for the lever and for the portafilter. Sorry for the Gonzo style camera here, by the way. I don't have a nice camera stand. Here's a metal. It's an RSVP tamper. I know there are better, more precise tampers out there for this 49 millimeter group, but this is the one that I have with it. The thing I like about the later model second generation Pavonis, including this one, the late 90s ones, is the pressure stat, and it's very convenient. I have some older generations. I have a first generation from 1964, and I also have one from the mid-80s, which is the 2-switch style. But you can just hear the P-stat kick the heating element back on. But the P-stat is really convenient, and it doesn't steam all the time, which means that you could theoretically leave this guy on for hours without worrying about it boiling away, like the other ones that are regulated by the steam valve. So from that aspect, it's quite convenient of a machine. One thing I don't necessarily like about really any of the second generation groups is that it's heated by the group head itself is heated by the steam. Actually, what that means is that it gets up to heat pretty quickly, but after 2 or 3 shots, you have to do some techniques to cool the group back down. Otherwise, your shots will start to get too hot. But which is fine. This thing was made to be turned on, make a few shots of espresso in the morning or in the evening or whatever, then turn back off. That was the operating parameters of this machine. If you want to serve a dinner party with this machine, well, then you have to have a few things ready. Quite a few baskets and some mechanisms to cool the group down after doing a few shots. And that's one nice thing about having the thermometry here, is that you can tell when the group's starting to get too hot. Here is actually a brass piston. One of the other things I don't like about the late 90s models, even though the seals on this guy are relatively fresh, they were replaced recently. The piston is a Teflon piston, which actually helps a little bit for the heat, but I've read some stories that they're a little bit more prone to failure than the brass pistons, which last forever. So I went ahead and got a replacement piston. The next time that the seals need to be changed, the piston can simply be switched out. Or if for some reason, highly unlikely, but if for some reason the Teflon piston were to fail before the next gasket change, well, then you can replace it with the brass one is here. This is a pressure stat. This is an adjustable pressure stat that can go in here if for some reason the pressure stat were to fail, or if I decided that the standard 1 bar is, at one time I was thinking about lowering the boiler pressure in here to make it last have a couple more shots before I have to before I have to cool it down. But I decided I like the 1 bar. It's got a really strong steaming ability at 1 bar, and I didn't want to give that up. Because even though I mostly drink straight espressos, I have friends that like milk-based drinks. So, and it's a really good microfoamer. I won't show that in this video, but anyway, so I just ground this right before starting the video, so I'm going to go ahead and get a shot ready. First thing I need to do is bleed the air out of it. So let me do that real quick. Okay, as you can see, there's a lot of false pressure in there. The manometer basically went back to 0, so I'm going to wait just a couple seconds for it to rebuild steam up there, and then I'm going to finish bleeding it. I just filled the boiler right before this video, so there's a lot of air in the boiler. Normally, it doesn't take 2 leads like this. But every time you open the cap, you let more air in, and then you're going to have to do the double bleed. You can do without the double bleed, but then you'll get a spongy sort of feel on the lever when you do your first pull. So all right, half a bar should be good enough for me to continue the bleeding. I'm using a frothing pitcher under the wand. Okay, that should be more than good, and you can see actually that the temperature jumped quite substantially. Now this is the temperature on the outside of the group. The temperature on the inside of the group, of course, is going to be substantially hotter. So you have to figure out at what temperature reading this thing says to come out with a good espresso temperature that you like. For me, this is about it. When it hits about 160, that's when I know it's time to pull a shot. So I'm going to take my basket, put it inside the bottomless port filter here. Maybe I'll get a good Crema video, I'm not sure. Alright, so what I do is I like to lift the lever just until right up under the point where it would open. Put the portafilter in. Okay, lock it into place and lift. You can hear the water fill into the group. Now I'm going to let it pre-infuse for a little bit. Pro tip, if you want to watch the bottom, or if you want to watch the irrigation of the coffee, is to put a little like makeup mirror down here so you can see it. I have one. It's on my other machine at the moment. I forgot to bring it over for the video. But this is probably good enough for pre-infusion time. So I'm going to attempt to get this in a good position here and then pull down on the lever. I wait till I see I go slowly till I see the first drops, and then I go nice and hard. There's a little bit of channeling there. You saw it spurt. Alright. Now I've done a lot of experiments with this thing. Let's see that Crema there. I've done a lot of experiments with this thing, putting a bathroom scale under it and doing the calculations to see, what sort of pressure on the handle would create the nice declining pressure profile that a lot of spring levers do if the, smooth, creamy espresso is the type you prefer. And what it wound up boiling down to in the very end is actually just keeping the flow constant. Keeping the flow constant will mean that you're putting continually less pressure down on the handle, which gives you that nice declining pressure profile that you like. Okay. So this isn't my best pull. I'm a little bit out of practice because I've been using a different machine lately. I should have cut it off a little bit earlier. But you can see it still had a pretty decent head of Crema on it. I've pulled almost 100% Crema shots out of this machine before. But, of course, the true proof is in the pudding, so I'm going to take a little sip. That's pretty good. Nice and layered. That was a dark roast. I put it in. I normally put medium roast through.